Hello and welcome to this, the third of 4 video lectures about the human value of liberty. It is called Feel and Think and explores the question, how do we exercise free will? The conscious individual is the most complex thing we know of. Trying to do it justice on 2 slides, well now that is funny. But let's give it a try anyway. Our bodies have automatic processes that are, well, processes that normally just work automatically without any kind of initiation. Examples are pumping of blood around the body, breathing, digesting food. But our brains can override these processes instinctively, such as the instinctive reflex to hold our breath when we go underwater. Every air-breathing animal that goes underwater does that. The brain runs those kind of instinctive reflexes. Our animal brains hold other animal instincts too, such as the instinctive judgment required of animals when they sense danger, whether to stand our ground and possibly have to fight or to run away. And the well-remarked upon instinctive sexual preferences of human heterosexuals. Males notice beauty queens, females notice status alphas. Presumably, these preferences are instinctive for good evolutionary reasons, since our animal brains evolved. But as well as having animal instincts in our brains, humans have minds that can override our animal instincts. We can override fight or flight with negotiate and trade. You keep to that side of the river and we'll keep to this side. Oh, and that's a nice shell necklace. I've got a spare axe head. Want to trade? And when it comes to instinctive sexual attraction, our minds can and do override our animal instincts. It could be love. And there's far more to human relationships than simple sexual attraction. There might even be the contemplation of a long-term relationship with vows of faithfulness, which are the explicit rejection of our animal instincts. Note the slope, lower to higher. That shows which came earlier or later in human evolution and consciousness. One of the oversimplifications of this slide is that it doesn't show how the brain has different regions. These regions evolved at different times and were built on top of each other. Finally, the mind itself has 3 parts. The 3 parts of the mind are 1, what we are conscious of, what we feel and think. Then 2 and 3 are the 2 parts that we are not conscious of. Note that Carl Jung, the psychologist who came up with this structure, used the term unconscious for these 2 parts, but I'll use subconscious to distinguish them from sleep. The 2 parts of the subconscious are number 2, what is personal to me, and number 3, what is held collectively. This 3-part structure is what we'll look at on the second of this 2-slide simplification. Bear with me because we're going to start with number 2, the personal subconscious. The personal subconscious is where our individual inner selves lie, our traits, values, experiences. Next up, number 3, the collective subconscious. The collective subconscious contains what is common to all of us. Somehow we are pre-programmed to absorb grammar rules. 4-year-olds use grammar very well. Similarly, there are non-rational biases common across populations, such as confirmation bias, where we accept facts that support our pre-existing beliefs more readily than facts that contradict those beliefs. We all do that. It's a bias all of us have in our collective subconscious. There are also what anthropologists call universals. That is, ideas they come across in culture after culture, such as magic. We each don't invent or learn the idea of magic. That idea, along with many universals, comes preloaded in our collective subconsciouses. That's plural. We each have our own collective subconscious. Despite its name, we don't share one. Morality is a special universal in that we all seem to have the same moral principles. Moral principles that we will look at in the 5th video lecture on the human value of tolerance, called Politics. And of course, something we have all experienced, or at least noticed, that different societies differ from each other in many ways. Those differences we describe as culture, and your own society's ways are absorbed into your collective subconscious so that you can get along with other members of your society. These two parts of the subconscious are the source of our intuitions and feelings. First, intuitions. An explanation of our intuitions is given by Kahneman in his best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Intuitions are the thinking fast part. That's an important point. Most of our behavior, most of the time, is driven by our subconscious, not by our conscious self. The second output from our subconscious is our feelings. We are not conscious of how our feelings are arrived at. That is a process that happens deep in our subconscious, where value appraisals are made using our personal and collective subconscious. But we are aware of the output of these value appraisals. They come to our conscious selves as feelings. One note to make. When we are instantly attracted by some idea or meme, that is not our conscious self doing some evaluation of that meme. It is the subconscious where that meme resonated. It's something we feel that makes sense to us. The conscious self is where we feel and think. We are conscious of our feelings. I feel angry. But unless we think hard about it, unless we think slow, we are not conscious of the value appraisal done deep within us that produced the feeling. And we are conscious of our thoughts. I think the answer is 22. Thus, our conscious self is composed of two parts: the feelings that our conscious selves receive from our subconscious, and the rational, analytical thinking that we do wholly in our conscious selves. One hangover from the patriarchy, discussed in the 2nd video lecture on the human value of tolerance, called Gender, is the idea that reason is all about thinking, but it's not. We reason in our conscious self with feelings and thoughts. Feelings are not the opposite of reason. Feelings and thoughts together are reason. A final thought, which comes from a vague feeling of guilt about the simplification that I am very conscious of. Apologies to Carl Jung, on whose ideas this simplification is based. As stated on the previous slide, our behavior, that is our actions, are determined most of the time by our intuitions. Intuitions come from our subconscious, but as Kahneman and many others have described in great detail, our subconsciouses are biased. There's a list of cognitive bias in Wikipedia, and some of them, common to all of us, are post-purchase rationalization, or choice supportive bias. You persuade yourself through rational argument that a purchase you just made was good value. When you choose option A instead of option B, you are likely to amplify the advantages of option A and not notice or de-emphasize the advantages of option B. Whereas before purchase, you may have been indecisive. You may even have decided your choice by the toss of a coin. But once you've invested your money in option A, you become an advocate for option A, to others and of course to yourself. You seek to reassure yourself by rationalizing your purchase decision. You become biased in favor of the option you chose. The value you assign to something before buying it is less than the value you assign to it after gaining possession. In some non-rational way, its value increases just by taking possession. Availability heuristic. You overestimate the likelihood of events with greater availability in your memory, such as a bloody terrorist attack you saw on TV. The availability of memories can come from how recent they are, or how unusual or emotionally charged, or how bizarre they may be. We have an irrational fear of terrorism when we are much more likely to be killed in a car crash. But car crashes don't make it to our screens very often, whereas someone just thinking about being a terrorist is hauled into court and paraded across our screens. The bias this availability heuristic generates can result in irrational decisions. Someone might see news of a shark attack in another country and decide to stay home rather than going to the beach, even though it is said most accidents happen in the home. Courtesy bias, the tendency to give an opinion that is more socially correct than one's true opinion, so as to avoid offending anyone. Most of us are polite. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. After all, it's only common courtesy. Not invented here. The aversion to contact with or use of products, research, standards, or knowledge developed outside my group. Sometimes called the not invented here syndrome. And confirmation bias, the tendency to search for, interpret, focus on, and remember information in a way that confirms one's preconceptions. That's a powerful bias which is hard to counter. We each search for confirmation that what we know or believe already is correct, and we tend to disregard or dismiss information that suggests otherwise. If you look at the Wikipedia page cited above, you'll probably be amazed at just how many common biases there are. And it states, there are also controversies over some of these biases as to whether they count as useless or irrational, or whether they result in useful attitudes or behavior. For example, when getting to know others, people tend to ask leading questions which seem biased towards confirming their assumptions about the person. However, it has been argued this kind of confirmation bias is an example of social skill, a way to establish a connection with the other person. Daniel Kahneman, in Thinking Fast and Slow, came up with causes trump statistics. Jonathan Haidt, among others, uses the term motivated reasoning. And Amal Rajan said for social media, it's the industrialization of confirmation bias. The fact is, if we think fast, we think biased. There's stuff in your subconscious that you didn't put there. The collective subconscious idea is supported by anthropology. Brown, an anthropologist, made a list of human universals, that is, ideas common across cultures and time, which includes magic, baby talk, melody, metaphor, mourning, feasting, age statuses, belief in the supernatural, collective identities, envy, generosity being admired, inheritance rules. The list of human universes is long. Those shown here are just a small selection. How could these ideas appear independently thousands of times in different times and places if they weren't already in our heads. Pinker writes of an enormously rich set of behaviors and emotions and ways of construing the world that can be found in all of the world's 6,000 odd cultures. We are not a blank slate. Steven Pinker is a best-selling author of books on human psychology and the human condition. The personal subconscious idea is supported by genetics. According to Plummin, the main influences on each of us are A, nature, that's our inherited genes, B, chance, unpredictable events, and C, nurture, controllable environmental influences. Parents see that siblings behave differently from the moment they're born. Identical twins raised apart retain many identical psychological as well as physical traits, and adopted siblings do not grow alike. It's nature over nurture for Plummin. Pinker as well. Pinker has noted that some are motivated to reason that human minds are malleable blank slates. There is political appeal in the idea of equally blank slates that might be improved on for the wider benefit of humanity. But the science is against them. We are not blank slates. We come preloaded with a lot of apps. So how do things get inside your head? The conscious self is an inherited faculty. We inherit this, and we have varying degrees of proficiency. Between different people, there are varying degrees of proficiency. And as well as it being inherited, it can be affected by nurture, or more often the lack thereof, like fetal alcohol syndrome or deprivation that doesn't allow eating the right foods to get the right nutrition. That can have a detrimental effect on our inherited faculty to feel and think. And we can develop our conscious selves. We can learn to be better thinkers by, for example, practicing puzzles before an IQ test, or by consciously considering others, empathizing, to improve our ability to feel. Mindfulness, which is prayer or meditation for the secular, is the latest fad in conscious self-improvement. Much of our schooling is about developing the capability of our conscious selves. Our personality traits are mostly inherited. Our experiences through life are obviously learned, but our values might be a bit of both. The collective subconscious for each of us is both preloaded apps and learning. Look at the complexity there. There must be such complexity if we are unique individuals with our own minds. Nobody else has my mix of genes. Nobody else has learned from my personal experiences. And I have been subject to several layers of cultural mental programming. National, regional, generational, social class, organizational, professional, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, etc. How can anyone seriously suggest that an individual human can be defined merely by their race or a mix of skin tone, gender, and sexuality? So, do we have deterministic minds or not? In short, the answer is yes and no. Intuition, thinking fast, that's most of the time, and it's wholly subconscious. We're on autopilot, doing what's routine. We can recognize patterns. We have mental models which steer us. We can make fast, intuitive leaps. We can even store slow thinking, something we've learned, something we've been trained in, something we experienced. We can store that learning as mental algorithms, and they go into our intuitions. It hurts to think slow all the time. We recognize patterns and from an early age develop a mental model of our world that we continually update, like genetically programmed instincts such as fight or flight. Our minds develop cognitively programmed intuitions, such as who to trust. We can program these intuitions ourselves by learning something new, then storing that learning as an algorithm of how to perform that learned task. Very simplified, we are programmed, but often flawed, robots most of the time. We might be asked, what were you thinking? But of course, we weren't thinking. Our conscious self is much richer. We feel. The feelings are sourced from subconscious value appraisals that manifest in our conscious. Fear is a threat appraisal. Vengeance is an injustice appraisal. Compassion is a care appraisal. We feel confident or not. We feel fairness and injustice. We feel love and hate. We appreciate truthfulness and faithfulness. We are moved by literature, art, and music. We have values, sometimes feeling the spiritual, believing what we feel. Feelings energize us. They make our values psychologically real. We want to act on our feelings. If we overfeel, though, or feel without thought, then we are emotional and can't be reasoned with. Thinking slow, conscious, rational thought. Logical analysis, abstract what if, imagine. We can think things through. We can break things down into their component parts and apply logic to create insight and plans. We can run experiments through our minds. What if we did A? What would be the effect on B? Would it be better if we did A and C at the same time? And we can imagine different futures, different strokes of a paintbrush, different outcomes. But if we overthink or think in the absence of feeling, we are cold, calculating, unreasonable. The difference between intuitions and feel is that intuitions just happen, but we are conscious of our feelings. Feel is part of our conscious reasoning process, a part of our cognition that is often looked down upon as inferior to rational thought. But why should my feelings be considered inferior? They are just as much a part of my conscious self as my thoughts. We apply our free will, conscious reasoning, only when we choose to or have to. Machines have masters, and the intuitive robot inside our minds has a master called free will. As conscious beings, we feel, we think, and we act. When what we do, act, is driven by our analysis, think, and is consistent with what we believe and value, feel, it seems right. When not so, we suffer cognitive dissonance, and that hurts. So we could upgrade Descartes and say, I feel and think exercising my free will through conscious reasoning, therefore I am. Thank you for watching. The next in the series, Understanding Ourselves Through Our Human Values, is the fourth of 4 video lectures about the human value of liberty. It is called Progress and Tolerance and explores the question, how do we expand liberty? It can be found at www.conservatus.com, where there's reasoning that resonates. Conservatus, keep safe, intact, save from danger our human values.